My father, being an entrepreneur, whenever he traveled anywhere, he would come back with a new car. He would, yeah. I mean, there was a situation like, I've seen the best of cars in my childhood. We had a Merc, we had a Nissan, we had a Vauxhall.
Wow.
There are different cars that you. And remember this one time where I was not well, and I think he bought an entire toy shop and got it home. And I went to the room and I realized I was not a person who was very much materialistic or anything, but that transition was more seamless. Like, for someone who could just walk into any shop and buy whatever I want. I used to have like 2 people accompany me and for my haircut and all of that.
That's just some big shot. Okay, I understand.
One of the biggest misconception about government jobs of people I've seen is, so RBIH is a subsidiary of the Reserve Bank of India to accelerate innovation in the, I would say, the financial services sector. There are different themes under RBIH, of which Fintech is one of the focus areas. So as much as I'm supporting entrepreneurs, I also give a word of caution to people who are getting into entrepreneurship that it's not for everyone. Sometimes the biggest mistake that entrepreneurs make is...
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Dhairya Decodes Podcast. If you're someone who's always been intrigued by the entrepreneurial world and by the fintech world and the confluence of these two industries, then today's guest is definitely going to amaze you, and his journey of building his own venture to actually selling it to an early stage VC to joining one of the most coveted institutions in the country, supporting a lot of incubators early on in his career days to actually, studying at the most, again, reputed institutions globally. Aakarsh Naidu is going to be joining us on the Dhairya Decodes podcast today. He currently heads startups and fintech at RBIH, which is the RBI Innovation Hub. And prior to his journey of venturing into leading this vertical and role at RBIH, he has also actually went on to build a startup called Startupreneur, which was a UK-based startup, and he also went on to sell it to an early stage VC. Not just that, prior to his entrepreneurial stint, he worked at one of India's leading startup incubators, that is IIM Bangalore's NSRCEL. And he was also working as a research associate at ISB for quite a bit. Not just that, he went on to work with the team at Facebook for a brief bit, heading their startups program for India and South Asia. And there is a lot more to his journey, graduating from the London School of Economics. He is somebody who brings with him a very rich experience of working with different startup founders to now mentoring them in the fintech space specifically. And in today's episode, we're going to be decoding his career trajectory. We'll understand a lot more about how he kickstarted his career, what were his early career choices influenced by, how did he get into the entrepreneurial space to then moving into actually supporting different incubation centers and everything around his journey. So stick around till the very end, and without any further ado, let me welcome Aakarsh to the Dhairya Decodes podcast.
Thank you so much, Dhairya, for that wonderful introduction. And when you were articulating it so well, I didn't know if I really did all those things, but it sounded sounded really nice. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
No, my pleasure. And thank you so much for taking out the time, Aakarsh.
Yeah.
Like we were discussing off camera, you've obviously had a very diverse experience with a couple of things that you've done, right? And I think the fact that you get to kind of interact with the who's who in the country a lot of times, and you get to obviously be on different sides of the table, it's going to be an insightful conversation for sure, because I was really inspired by your career trajectory, right? The agenda of this podcast is just to bring folks like you who've never feared taking that plunge in their career and experimenting with things, right? And maybe taking the road less traveled.
Yes.
So why don't we actually start with getting to know your childhood a little better? Because I always start my podcast with this question. It's like a standard. That's the only thing standard in my podcast. And I'll tell you the reason, right? I feel that a lot of who we become and the choices we make, only if we obviously backtrack and connect the dots backwards, as Steve Jobs says, everything is aligned to the early impressions we have in the environment that we grow up in, people that we see around us and what they're doing, and the values with which your family raises you, right? So I want to know from you, what kind of a family background did you come from? What kind of an influence did the family background and what they were pursuing in their career or people around you were pursuing have on you choosing a certain career path and your early career choices?
I think you put it very well. The answer lied in your question itself in terms of how family background shapes one's career choices.
Yeah.
And I think that is true in my case as well, because my father has been an entrepreneur himself.
Oh, lovely.
And that's where the story began, because as a kid, we saw our father as an entrepreneur. He used to have an office. He used to have about 500 plus employees.
Oh my
He was
God.
working in the renewable energy sector. That as a career choice, that seemed like a natural progression. However, what was interesting is the fact that me coming from Andhra Pradesh is traditionally known for people who take up
IT
career
jobs.
IT jobs, engineering or doctor. These are the professions, and
But
anything
they're very
out.
career driven, right? That's always like the notion around
Absolutely,
it. You take your
absolutely.
academics very seriously.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I mean, we also took
You also did. I know.
academics seriously, but the good part was I was given the freedom to choose that path. I mean, my parents could have very well said that you just take up engineering and then pursue that journey, which may or may not have resonated, in the longer term with what I'm doing.
Correct.
But the interesting part was, I chose a stream which was around business management. I was a topper, economics topper, gold medalist at my school.
Oh, lovely.
So there was a natural inclination towards business-related subjects, and that's how I got into this space. So studying facets of business was always my interest.
Yeah.
And seeing my father as an entrepreneur, seeing the ups and downs, it's not an easy journey, I would
sure.
say.
Yeah.
So that's where it all began. But I guess it takes time for you to traverse your own career path to find what you actually want to do. Yeah.
True. No, that's really interesting. And the fact that your father was in the renewable energy space and ran like a 500 people company,
Yes.
it's massive in itself. So tell me a little bit about what were a few things you would have seen him, not coming in at a regular time and going out at a regular time and having like a corporate work environment, right?
Yes.
So what were some early learnings that you picked on from him, maybe dinner table conversations or, during festivities, that stuck with you through your father's entrepreneurial journey?
So as a kid, the things that you remember are, the good memories, so to say. And my father, being an entrepreneur, he used to also travel quite a lot. And as you mentioned, an entrepreneur's timings are not fixed.
Yeah, correct.
So that's something that was evident. But the fact is, whenever he traveled anywhere, he would come back with a new car. He would.
What?
Yeah, I mean, there was a situation like, I've seen the best of cars in my childhood.
Was
like,
he a car enthusiast?
He was. We had a Merc, we had a Nissan, we had a Vauxhall. There are different cars that you see. So, the curiosity for me as a child was like, I look
Which car is going to be coming?
Yeah, which is going to come. And then he used to come back with a lot of, toys and gadgets. So all these walkie-talkies and other things that I saw as a child. And remember this one time where I was not well. And I think he bought an entire toy shop and got it home. And I went to the room and I realized these are things that I never thought, but while as you were reflecting. So I think somewhere there was that aspiration in terms of the things that you could do as an entrepreneur.
That would have given you an insight into what kind of power and the kind of freedom it can give you.
So I remember once this was in the early or mid 90s where he won this golden energy award or something given by the government, and then he had gone to Delhi to receive the award by I think some senior dignitaries and all of that.
Yeah.
So I remember that moment as well, and I really liked the way things used to be. I used to go to the safe factory where they used to manufacture everything. I used to go to his office, sometimes sit on his seat, and then all the team that was working, I used to feel like a boss and all of that. But I mean, that is the the rosy part of it.
Correct.
I mean, there was again a phase where things got a bit challenging. The sector was not as great. Things are moving. So that's where you also get a lot of humility that it's not always this rosy. And I was not a person who was very much materialistic or anything, but that transition was more seamless. Like for someone who could just walk into any shop and buy whatever I want. I used to have like 2 people accompany me and for my haircut and all of that.
That's just some big shot. Okay, I underestimated you.
No, that's one part of the childhood, and then you sort of see a challenge.
And you've seen the other phase.
Absolutely, and then biggest learning for me was the cycle, the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. Is something that you learn over time. It's not something that cannot be taught theoretically. I said it's a cycle or whatever.
Correct.
And that's when you start acknowledging the uncertainties and embracing all these, challenging situations. And I feel that's what made me get used to a spectrum of, different lifestyles. So seeing something like that, to even being able to, take.
But was it easy to transition though?
Yeah. Because that's where the other part of the upbringing comes into picture, where my mother was very much grounded. She used to ensure that, we are, remain humble, grounded, etc. So we never had some airs around us. Even the school I was studying in, called HPS, is traditionally known for people who are like, these brats or whatever, all of that. And my, peers were also like that, coming from good families and all.
Yeah.
But never through my journey was I sort of carried away or anything, because my mother was the constant grounding factor. So over the years, the other day we were just reflecting between, how my father played his role of, taking on the world and providing us.
Getting a new car, buying you a toy shop.
No, providing that we are financially comfortable. And mother, on the other hand, was ensuring that, we stay grounded no matter what kind of situations we go through.
But that balance is so beautiful, right? Because then it shapes up individuals in a very different manner.
Absolutely, yeah. And then comes my brother, whom I will also cover maybe in the later part, but he was also a kind of a part of my journey.
Is
and
he
also
younger or elder?
He's my younger brother.
Okay.
And he joined me in my entrepreneurial journey as well later on.
Oh.
But that's something that I can talk about.
You'll talk about that later. Sure.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Aakarsh, for sharing that. And I think I love the way how you put it, right? You said that while there was a downhill that came in, and that there's always this down curve that an entrepreneur has to go through, no matter how successful you are.
Yes.
Probably your mother just holding the ground and always helping you stay close to the roots did not make that journey or transition very difficult, right? Because for all you know, it could have been a very difficult transition, right? But at the same time, like you very rightly said, while it is as fancy as it sounds, it was just, I think the place where your father probably was coming from was just a moral responsibility as a father to give the best life to my children.
Exactly.
And if I have the means to do so, then why not, right?
Yes.
Now, with that kind of a background, seeing your father do so well, and then also having this down curve that you saw, did you ever at a point feel that you would still want to resort to, or did you have notions about, let's say, doing like a corporate or a government job versus doing something of your own? Because when you come from such a background and you've seen everything, you can form biases, right? So what was your understanding of the corporate ecosystem and the government job, private, the public sector jobs versus just somebody who's just doing something of their own?
Yeah, so, all these experiences that happened in childhood. So I could never really articulate that how a journey of entrepreneurship looks like. It's what we saw at home and all of that. At the same time, I was not averse to, say, taking up a job, because the peers that I was with, the college, and naturally people, say, take up a placement after your undergrad, and or you go for masters, etc. All that would happen. So, that opportunity was always there. So it was not at the back of my mind that I have to go back and, say, join a family business. That was not a value system.
You never considered that?
Not really, because it's my father gave me this, broader value system. I have been a self-made man. I've kind of built things from scratch, and it's a journey that I would also like you to undertake. For yourself and for you to figure out. And thus, I was never under any sort of pressure to take up a particular stream of, education or a particular business line. I had the freedom to explore. I think that's something that I feel potentially today's generation have vis-a-vis during my time, where it was more constricted. So I think somewhere that was really helpful for me to figure out. And thus, being with the peers that I was, taking up a job was like a natural progression after completing my studies. And I didn't have any idea at that point in college. You're only wondering, the placement that you're going to get, the package that you're going to have, or the college that you're going to.
It's like the end of the world, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it starts with class 10, class 12.
12th, and then the first job, and then life it's never ending.
Yeah. So that's that. But, more specifically, today I have insights, in terms of what a government job entails, what a corporate role
Yeah,
entails.
because you've kind of seen
All three,
yeah.
government, corporate,
Entrepreneurship.
entrepreneurship. So I can specifically comment on each of them.
I would like you to.
Yes,
Hence
yes,
I asked the
yes,
question.
yes. So yeah.
What is your experience? Because again, I obviously gave them context to what you were doing, but because you were at entities like Facebook,
Yes.
to incubation centers and working at ISB, and then IIM Bangalore's incubation center, to now with RBIH, to doing your own startup and then selling it off also.
Yes, yes.
What are a few things that you learned through each one of these that also make the three stand out and apart from each other? Like, I'm sure a government job has its own perks, or just being regulated by a government authority in general, versus a private sector job versus just doing something of your own.
Absolutely. So each one comes with its own set of, say highs and lows.
Yeah.
We must acknowledge that. And most importantly, you need to find your fit in terms of what is it that suits you.
Yeah.
I was just giving her an example the other day. Sorry.
By the way, guys, we have like a, what do you say, off-camera guest or appearance by Charmika, who is another LinkedIn creator and works at RBIH and Aakarsh's team.
Yes, yes.
So that's her.
So, yeah, so I was talking to Charmika the other day and I told her that if you like cricket, there are different roles that you can play. You can be a wicket keeper, you can be a commentator, you can be a batsman, bowler,
Correct.
fielder. You're good at something.
Yeah.
But just because being a batsman might be more
Cool.
or is something that might attract the audience or have the pull, does not mean you're going to be good at it. You might be the best commentator, but if the moment you realize that you are a commentator and you're good at it, you will be very successful. So I think that's the journey that you need to explore different spectrums, and very quickly coming back into government versus private and entity. So starting with, say being a government institution or sort of quasi-government institution. So there are two things you need to know. There's a hardcore government jobs, which is you go through these competitive exams and
and then
you get a job. It comes with its own set of bureaucracy and perks.
Perks, yeah, a lot of perks.
Perks, of course, in terms of the, ranges from housing to, different kinds of facilities, allowances and facilities that you get. But the challenge is, of course, the bureaucracy. Being a government institution, you are not able to represent yourself in a way that you would like to.
You're used to.
You're views. You're in a way representing the voice of the government, and therefore, and there's a whole line of, reporting line that you need to be cognizant of. Does sometimes restricts your creativity, but if one is seeks power and wants to grow up the ranks, it makes sense for them, and wants to seek some stability in a particular role. One of the biggest misconception about government jobs of people I've seen is, it बहुत आराम है, you can just relax.
No, it's just very laid back. Laid back.
But it is quite the opposite, that I've interacted with government officials, and they are far more hardworking. Whether I cannot comment whether more smart working, but more hardworking in terms of there's no boundary in terms of weekends, etc. I've noticed this with various
They're ready to go that extra mile, I guess.
Extra mile, or like they have that pressure ki boss ne bola hai to karna hai. So the boss's word becomes gospel, and then they do whatever it takes to make things happen. So sometimes they tend to get overworked and all of that, and a lot of this could also be unfounded in terms of the kind of requests that come from various people from, say, different strata of the organization. So there's a lot of things that happen last minute, etc. But that's the challenging part and whatever, but they get the kick of doing it. Then there is the government bodies, which is something like, say, RBIH or say Startup India, government-backed bodies, but not necessarily the subsidiary of the government. So which is where we have a little more freedom to sort of innovate, experiment, go that extra mile. Because
I feel like these are mini startups within a government
Absolutely. I mean, we call ourselves like a startup of the RBI, to accelerate innovation in the fintech sector, financial services sector. So we get a lot more, sort of leeway to focus on innovation. And that's the exciting part. So I understood that I may not want to be a government employee per se, but work with a government body because one, you're creating impact at scale.
For sure.
Whatever you do is actually going to have, leave that mark. So
Yeah.
I really take this role at RBIH very seriously, that, you are creating a stamp, a mark that is going to build a legacy
For sure.
for this institution as a national institution and for the ecosystem.
Right.
So that's the space that I started enjoying. And the part is you're with startups, a lot of innovation going on, a lot of activity, and you are an enabler. So you're making these conversations happen. Now, quickly moving to corporate. I did have a brief corporate stint at various places. Let's say with Facebook, my experience has been that you get the best of life in terms of the office space. You could walk in, get all sorts of refreshments, food, whatnot. And you travel well, all of that is there.
Is the pay good?
I would like to say very good. If you were, when I spoke about say government bodies, and then there is Facebook.
They pay really well.
Yeah. I'm under an NDA with Facebook, so cannot reveal. But I've kind of given a hint that, of course, these corporates in general, they tend to pay well by industry standards.
Yeah.
But say generally corporates are also restricted in their own way, because again, it's the thing of these are large organizations where structures are established, and then your role is very defined. So
there's a set system process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you need to stick to the script. You need to do what you're good at.
Yeah.
And that was for me as someone who likes to work
the room
across.
For innovation must have just left the door.
Yeah, I would like to say that the kind of innovation that happens is very different compared to, say, in a government body where you're putting things from scratch, learning from the market, and also you need to be cognizant that you're a subsidiary of a government institution, so you have to be careful, doubly careful in terms of the way you're approaching the community.
Yeah.
But in corporates, the direction is very clear, and that's where I personally felt like a challenge that I want to do more. Having worked with IIM Bangalore's incubator, where it was a clean slate where we could set up a lot of processes. I saw the team grow from 5 to 20 members. And then we were earlier working with 10, 15 startups. It went to 100 plus startups.
Great.
All of that. So that journey was almost like a startup journey within, a government body.
Yeah. You were with them for about 3 years.
Yes. I think that was, I would say, still one of the best times that I had professionally.
Yeah.
And that's where I realized my interest, for the supporting entrepreneurs.
What was your learning majorly from that experience of 3 years working at?
That I liked incubation as a space. And even my venture that I started was also in the incubation.
Yeah.
But largely, it was that I realized I'm a person that's good at working with different ideas. As an entrepreneur, you need to pick up one idea and go deep with it. And then I felt like I was more divergent in terms of the way I can engage with different ideas and how you could enable them. So that was the journey that I liked, and it also gave a spectrum of things. I would want to highlight that the life of a person who is in the incubation space gets to experience different things. One day you are, speaking at events, evangelizing, bringing startups on board. The other day you're, working in the back end, trying to facilitate the selection of these startups. So you engage, you get to know different models. The other day you're running these programs
and mentoring
them, what kind of inputs to give them, how to structure the programs. You're working with mentors, VCs, government bodies. The kind of network that you build being in an incubator is highly underrated, and that is something that I really got from my first role and even till date. So I guess that's the learning I've had, and I'm coming to quickly
your
entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
I always say this, as much as I'm supporting entrepreneurs, I also give a word of caution to people who are getting into entrepreneurship that it's not for everyone.
Correct.
And that is something that you learn about yourself sooner than later, because your stakes are much higher later on in your career. Giving up a job just because as an afterthought of things not working, in your job or whatever. And it's always good to have a side hustle to experiment and learn about entrepreneurship, because one, ideas stem from your passion, or you feel like there is a problem, but there may not be a big market for that. And that is something that you need to validate early on. And second, the journey of entrepreneurship is very, very challenging, because the first few years at least, you are figuring out ways to pay your employees and you're not taking salary. And again, there are different journeys. You're bootstrapped, then it comes with your own money and resources. You take investor money, then you're accountable for their investment.
And then multiplying it for them.
And absolutely. So all of those factors come into play. So it's not an easy journey, but if it's the drudgery that really interests you, if the day-to-day is what is challenging you, then this is a game for you. The outcome is only like, it's just a byproduct of it.
Yeah.
And you just see and these outcomes come very few and far between. So the successes are very rare in entrepreneurship, and most of the time you're dealing with failure.
Yeah.
And if you are dealing with failure on a daily basis, it makes you stronger as a person, makes you resilient, and it makes you take challenges with a smile. It's like just another day kind of a thing. So for someone who's been in a corporate job, who's used to getting a paycheck at the end of the month, and can actually have a lifestyle, people take loans, they buy cars, houses, all of that. In entrepreneurship, you get money at one shot.
Yeah.
And that too, if there is an
exit,
absolutely, an exit event, or, of course, till the point that you build your cash flows and revenues, there is that journey you need to undertake.
Yeah.
So if you're ready for that, definitely get into entrepreneurship. That's where I come into the picture, and I help you scale in that journey if you made up that decision. Even if not, the good part is if we helped you make a decision not to become an entrepreneur, that also is a success.
Yeah.
We've saved one person's time and effort. Yeah, and money as well. Yes.
No, but I'm so glad that you actually, shared your thoughts around how it's not everyone's cup of tea, and I don't think there's anything wrong, right?
Yes.
Like, I also feel that a lot of people are like really not, let's say, meant to do corporate jobs as well. Like, you just can't do it.
Yes.
A lot of people similarly are just not carved out in a way to be entrepreneurs, and that's okay, right? Each to its own. You could be like killing it in your corporate job, why not? And you could be a very good entrepreneur too.
Yes.
But Aakarsh, why don't you take me through your entrepreneurial journey with Startupreneur? Tell me a little bit about what the startup was about.
Yes.
How did the idea come in? I know your brother was a part of it.
Yes.
When did you start building it, and to the point wherein you actually went on to, sell the company to an early stage VC?
Absolutely. So, as I was mentioning earlier, that most of the ideas stem from your own experience or background.
Yeah.
And given that I was working at NSRCL at IIM Bangalore, I used to work with a lot of entrepreneurs, but I knew that how incubators are managed is very unstructured. So there's no proper ERP in place where you can track the progress of startups. How do you onboard them? It was a very manual effort, and then there was no analytics and insight in terms of the entrepreneur's journey. And that is
Which year was this in?
This was around 2018 when I started this venture.
Got it.
But this was right after, say, me sort of moving on from IIM Bangalore. I always saw that there was this product gap somewhere. Like, incubators was a growing market. Today we have like 1,000+ incubators in the country, and VCs also operate similar in terms of onboarding startups.
Yeah.
So we thought that there has to be a digital platform for entrepreneurs to interact with the incubators, and also for incubators to manage the whole process digitally. And that's where the idea of Startupreneur was born, that we'll create a platform.
So it was tech driven.
It was tech driven mainly, and that's where the gap was. So we went ahead and started building this product. So I roped in my brother, who just so he also happened to study at the London School of Economics, and he was working at a fund, I would say an angel fund for startups. So he was already in this space. So I roped him in, and I said, why don't you join me on this entrepreneurial journey, and let's get started. So he sort of joined hands, and then we just built an initial product. The first version of the product was to create I would say a tool for entrepreneurs to build their business plan. And the second chapter of that product was how this business plan could really get access to investors, incubators, and all that kind of support. So there were two products that we were building, and we went ahead and built the product completely with a small team. We started bootstrapped.
You put in your money.
Yes, we put in our money, and then we also got the support of IIT Madras, where we jointly developed this platform.
Nice.
So IIT Madras had a pre-incubation center, and that's where we sort of co-created this product called the Startupreneur Tractor platform. Tractor is tracking plus incubator.
Okay.
So it became tractor.
Okay.
I mean, it sounds a bit corny, but but it is what it was. And then we started giving it to other incubators. And therefore, if you see, the trajectory was more from my personal experience, identifying a gap in the industry and then building a solution for it. One of the learnings that we had was launch your product soon enough in the market. Sometimes the biggest mistake that entrepreneurs make is they wait too long to actually get the first feedback of the customer. And they might be building something that they're possessive about, but the market may not need. And this is the case, especially in Bangalore, where some techie finds their creation very, very interesting and believes that there is a market out
You
there.
hold your idea very dear to yourself.
Absolutely.
Right?
And that is the first thing you should set aside.
Yeah.
And one of the entrepreneurs that I was working with earlier when I was at IIM Bangalore, he said, sell before you build. And he gave me an example of how he sold to, say, one of large corporates when he didn't have a product in place. And the corporate picked up the idea, gave him his first check, and then he used that money to build the product backwards.
Oh, wow.
And this is a learning that I got from my father and various other entrepreneurs as well. What the hell are you doing? Sell to the market first. So that's where, once the product was launched, our feedback was very iterative. We were learning on the go. But also that's where we hit our second roadblock, that we were listening to our customers too much. So the product kept getting customized to the needs of the market. And we were trying to build a SaaS product that is uniform across the industry. So we had to pick on those 10 features that are common for all the incubators. And that's where we started having a more standardized product in place, going to market, selling it. One of the biggest challenges was incubators were growing. They had a need for this, but they didn't have a budget to purchase something like that, because they hadn't heard of a tool like that at that point. So for them to create a line item from their budget to spend for this particular software was one of the challenges. And secondly, how do we quantify the value? They are saying we use Excel files, everything is already happening, why do we need your tool? Our challenge is first to find the entrepreneurs who will be incubated than have a software. So we were solving something that was good to have rather than a must have. So that is the third learning as an entrepreneur, that build something that the market really desires. Otherwise, your time to commercialize your product is that much more longer. So then we had to tweak our product a little bit, make it more for the here and now, where we help them find entrepreneurs, and then became a funnel for them to get entrepreneurs and then get incubated, and then they could manage and all of that. So then we started selling one incubator after another, and that's when this journey of London happened, the UK entity. It was very unexpected but interesting trajectory in our journey, where UK government has this scheme where you set up as a UK entity, and then the High Commission sort of gives you access to different countries across the world, where they actually have a lot of high commissions in different parts of the world, and they become your offices to expand your businesses in some sense.
Oh, nice.
So we get connected to local businesses in different countries. And then came the before we went to the UK, or around the time pandemic happened, and we had to pivot our product a little bit. And it was good in a way for us because people were going digital. So our platform was something that was helping incubators go digital. Otherwise, their operations stalled completely. Because they were largely based on a physical space. So that's where our product really took off. And a lot of the incubators across the world were also needing this. And there were a lot of these edtech programs where they wanted to train entrepreneurs. So our first product that we built was the B-Plan Creator. That also started taking off. And we realized that a lot of universities, academic incubators needed a product like this. And that's where we kind of created another entity in the UK, and they started helping us get connected to different Caribbean countries, Southeast Asian countries, Vietnam, all of these countries where we were able to sell that platform. So soon we realized that we were doing two things. One is the edtech platform, and we split the product into two, which was more of a unified. And then we were operating for different markets. So Indian version was more of the incubator-led, platform and all of that. So it was scaling. Then we sort of had support of the Karnataka government, so called as KDEM, Karnataka Digital Economy Mission. So we sort of deployed a platform with them, which gave us access to several incubators, etc. And interestingly, through that journey, this product was also customized for VCs, any sort of bodies that were promoting entrepreneurship of any kind. And that's where we were pitching to this VC VC fund called Co-Create Ventures.
Okay.
And they liked our product. In fact, I was pitching to them as the customer, and they ended up liking the product so much that
That they wanted to
internalize it, and they had a very specific need for a platform like this, because they were going to universities to create campus founders, unicorns from campuses, and a platform like this was a perfect fit for their growth strategy.
Nice.
Which and that
So
sort
you
of
were at the right place at the right time.
place at the right time. And I would say this right place at the right time doesn't happen, just through luck.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
have to persist, be there,
yeah.
and then for people long enough to understand what you're doing. And that's where, this whole conversation started. I mean, if you ask me, I was not at that point looking to exit or, sell stake in my company or all of that. But also there was a scientific reason for me to do that. One, it was a bootstrapped entity, and to raise funds for an idea like this, you need to have a large market size.
Yeah.
This was a limited market size because there are only so many incubators. Already by then some alternative software started coming to the market, etc. So you need to sort of at some point know the market dynamics as well, and where this company is going to go in the next few years. And I, being bootstrapped, was paying out of my pocket, and then although we were getting revenues, the cash flows, take time. You service someone, but it takes 3 months for you to get
the money to come in.
Yeah. So there was these challenges also happening, but the business was growing. So it seemed like the right thing at that point, because the platform will see a larger market through this acquisition, and also given market conditions, this seemed like a right decision to take. And yeah, I think that's where the acquisition happened, and then the transition took place, all of that. But I would say, yeah, I think that's a journey that we saw. There's a lot more things that we learned along the way in terms of hiring, how to manage people, how to build a product, how to sell to customers. That's the exciting part of entrepreneurship.
Right.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much, Aakarsh, for actually taking us through that entire entrepreneurial journey of yours, and then obviously kind of finding the right partner to hand over your product to, and for them to kind of internalize it for themselves. But from, getting your startup acquired or sold to an early VC fund, to, just being very heavy on entrepreneurship from the beginning, right? Because seeing your father growing up being an entrepreneur, what was the trigger point or that point in your journey where you thought, I would want to go back to a 9-to-5 job, right?
Yeah.
But in an interesting space,
Yes.
with a mini startup within a government-backed body, right? Which is RBIH.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about how RBIH happened.
Yes.
How did you stumble upon the opportunity, and why did it seem like the right thing right after selling a startup?
Yes. So thing is, the entrepreneurial journey takes a toll on you. It's like even most of the large-scale entrepreneurs you've seen, all the unicorns also, 5, 8, 10 years down the line, they morphed themselves. I mean, without taking names, they started off with a particular model, but the entrepreneur has exited their stake and they moved on to a different idea. So that refresh is always needed in the journey of entrepreneurship. And that's a point where I felt like after that journey, the chapter was very nicely culminated. And then it gave me some time to introspect on what next.
Did you take a break after that?
Yeah, we did take a break, and my brother and I were also working on this, I would say, idea called SignaX.
I saw that also on your website.
Yes. So it's more of a deep tech idea where we thought, like, let's try something moonshot, and then that's where this whole metaverse space was coming up and all of that. So that's where SignaX sort of happened, and then he was taking a lead on that, and I was.
So are you guys building that also?
So it's something that is largely led by my brother, and I'm like sort of supporting him on that journey.
Got it.
So that was more of a Web3. So that's a different story for another day. But what I wanted to get at was, while this exploration was happening, my first love was incubation. That is something that I realized in my role at IIMB. And even Startupreneur was also in that space.
In that space, yeah.
But then RBIH was not in the radar. Like it was not expecting, I didn't even know there was a innovation hub of RBI, but somebody through my network referred to me that there's this role, there's this opportunity where, you can really.
So it came out of nowhere.
It came out of nowhere, and it was more serendipitous, but also being in the network, people identified me with that role.
Correct.
And they thought that I could be the right fit, and then they reached out to me with this opportunity. So I think being identified with a certain profession or a line
A
of
certain
work,
skill set and what gap you can
absolutely, I think that is important for you to attract the
Yeah.
right opportunities in the long run.
For sure.
And that's what happened to me here as well. And then I thought, like, okay, let me just take this up as a experimental thing. I joined, sort of part time to see how this shapes up, experimental consulting, all of that. So the work was getting more and more interesting, where we had to build almost an incubation practice within RBIH specifically for fintechs.
Yeah.
So the new challenge that I had was moving from a sector agnostic approach to a
very
specific sector.
Yeah.
And the biggest challenge for me was to understand the fintech sector. That's very unique and challenging in its own way.
Yeah.
So I spent a few months trying to understand what the fintech space is about. But more importantly, I brought in a lot of my connections of working with incubators, a lot of learnings, and being an entrepreneur myself, it gave me a lot of freedom to experiment and build programs in a way.
And you kind of built it from scratch, right?
Absolutely.
The entire vertical.
Literally,
so it was like again running a mini startup
absolutely.
yourself.
And then sort of to building the team now.
Yeah.
It's almost a 10-member team. We've kind of engaged with 30, 40 plus startups in the last 1 year. Brought in like 10 incubators. We've facilitated, I don't know, like so this whole bank fintech partnerships, conversations, etc. A lot of them were done. So it's almost like that's a journey. If you see that it's more of an entrepreneurship kind of a journey where I'm doing the same thing that I would do as an entrepreneur, but with the backing or support of an organization.
Yeah.
So that's something that people could also consider.
True.
If you're entrepreneurial in nature,
Yeah.
And your organization allows for that kind of innovation to take
Nothing
place.
like it, I think.
Absolutely. So that's a sweet spot that one needs to understand. Being an entrepreneur and being an entrepreneur and being entrepreneurial are like kind of two different things. So if you know that you're an entrepreneurial person and you can work with the support and the guidance of a larger organization, by all means you can do that. That's where a lot of these innovation teams have been set up in across all corporates, major banks. Incubators today, it's a function.
It's a function,
vertical within all large corporates, and that is where it presents a lot of opportunities in the space of open innovation, where you get different kinds of stakeholders to come together and co-create and innovate either a product or a service or improvise a service for an organization. And that's the approach we brought to RBIH as well, where we bring banks, fintechs, incubators, academic institutions, and we bring them in different formats such that this innovation can take place, and the banking sector can really take these innovations to the last mile in terms of making frictionless finance available to the consumers.
Yeah.
So that's the journey which makes it all the more interesting for us to know different problem statements, different challenges, more emerging technologies that can be brought in.
Yeah.
So the work is diverse in the sense that we're talking about financial inclusion and on one spectrum, where how do we bring the underserved, how do we give them access to credit with limited credit history, to the other spectrum where can you use emerging tech as an enabler to drive financial inclusion. How can you bring AI, generative AI to underwrite credit for person who does not have a digital trail established, and without collaterals, how can they get loan to fulfill their needs? So all this is happening, and that's the space that makes it very interesting about fintech per se.
No, very interesting. And I think while you obviously did explain and go a little deeper into what you're working on and the initiatives you're working at RBIH, from the audience's perspective, Aakarsh, because a lot of the folks who are tuning into this podcast are aspiring to do something similar, and that's why they've tuned in, right? Yes. Or they must have come across this word RBIH for the first time, right? Yes. Through this podcast. Could you just, in very simple terms, also, just for the audience's sake, talk a little bit about what exactly is the mission or the role that RBIH is trying to play? Yeah. And what kind of folks or talent do you look for in institutions like these? Because they're very new age.
Absolutely. So, the broad mandate of, RBIH is a subsidiary of the Reserve Bank of India to accelerate innovation in the, I would say, the financial services sector. There are different themes under RBIH, of which fintech is one of the focus areas.
Got it.
So that's what I represent, or my line of work looks at. And in terms of sorry, what was the question?
I just wanted to know that what does RBIH do,
okay,
firstly in
okay.
simple terms,
Yes,
and what
yes.
kind of talent or people are
Yes,
you
yes.
looking to hire
Yes, yes.
at RBIH?
Sure. So the fintech vertical at RBIH largely looks at accelerating the journey of fintechs and easing their partnership with banks that are the regulated entities. Because fintechs by themselves cannot offer their services to consumer because there's money involved. So fintechs need to partner with banks in the early stages until they are regulated themselves by the RBI. So there are a range of innovations and solutions that one, we need to identify, and two, we need to help them partner with the bank so that these innovations reach the last mile and the services become much more accessible to different range of customers. So in order to do that, we had to create different programs for different stages of startups, and the ecosystem around fintechs needed to be built. Fintech as a sector is very unique. One, it is regulated. Two, there is a reliance on bank fintech partnership. And three, you need access to data and APIs to actually make your product live or take it to the market. So these are the broad, and to achieve product market fit in a fintech sector is very, very challenging. So how do we ease the journey of a fintech to achieve product market fit and make it easier is what the work of the fintech team at RBIH is. And we work almost from an idea stage or a pre-idea stage until a product market fit stage. We work with a range of startups.
Okay.
One, when I say pre-idea, we run a lot of hackathons where we give the problem statement.
Okay.
So anyone who's seeking to innovate or build something and do not have a direction can participate in one of these hackathons.
Right.
And get a direction to their idea.
So RBIH hosts these hackathons.
Absolutely. We do it in partnership with various incubators, banks, so that there is a relevant problem statement that industry is facing, and then the right approach to help people become entrepreneurs. So hackathons, tech sprints, these are all good entry points for people without an idea or some mature startups wanting to sort of repurpose their solution, refine their product to make it more marketable. All of these initiatives are there. And then once you have an idea, you need to understand how to take that idea into a prototype or a product.
Yeah.
And that is where a pre-incubation program comes into the picture, where the journey is about 3 months, where the focus is on one, understanding the market, and two, building a prototype to suit the market needs. And then comes beyond pre-incubation is the incubation program, where it's more from say prototype to market kind of journey. Now you have a product, how do you take it to market? And then comes the acceleration program, which is market to scale.
Correct.
So if you see, today it's possible for a person with just an intent to become a fintech entrepreneur to actually build and scale their fintech through the programs that RBIH has to offer. And then some of these programs are thematic, where we look at, women-centric financial products, because women represent nearly half the population, but the financial products are not designed to their needs. Specific needs, and they're traditionally seen as people with a better repayment, capabilities and intent to repay is higher. So, can we not look at products that suit them? So there are different cohorts, segments of the population where you can build these financial products, and thus our programs have these themes, and then there's an emerging tech focus, etc. So I guess this is the journey that we are looking at. For someone, one to start up, this journey is very clear. You can always go through the RBIH website and sort of go through the programs and apply largely, and then they'll be notified on all the programs that we launch. But for someone who's willing to join, work in the team, we look for a range of diverse skill sets. One is some understanding of the startup world or ecosystem, because we are on a scale-up journey right now. So we moved very quickly from an idea to scaling up.
Correct.
And while you're scaling up, as a team, we cannot train people and go back to the basics. We need people who already understand the incubation space, startup world, etc. And then they get on and they're experts in their domain. Or you have to be very good within a particular domain.
Right.
Either you're good at, say, digital marketing or partnerships or community. You come with a very specific skill set that is fungible across different programs. So be a subject matter expert or have an understanding of the incubation space at large. These are very good entry points. Most of the team has grown through that lens, and we have a diverse set of people who graduated right out of college who are working in our team and are as capable as people who are experienced.
Yeah. Any core technical or finance related skill sets that you really look out for? Since you're dealing with fintech startups.
Absolutely. So, see, there are two things to look at. One is an understanding of incubation and startup engagement, startup portfolio management as a skill set. The other is understanding of fintech space at large. Because fintech itself is a universe of solutions that you need to understand how it has to be placed, what is the use case. So, much like any sector, you need to know the nuances, etc. So, someone who, say, has worked in a fintech but wants to transition into a more innovation kind of role, they are welcome to apply. Or someone who's worked in a bank wants to bring that expertise, definitely that is something that we will benefit from. So far, like most of the team has come from the startup world per se, but they've quickly picked up. So the team also has a lot of upskilling opportunities. They understand, they do these banking courses, formally trained on fintechs, banking, financial services. That really helps them in their role. So a lot of upskilling opportunities for people who want to transition into roles like these. Yeah.
Great. No, I think that'll be super helpful for people looking to probably apply to organizations like yours, and also understand what skill set that you look at, right, while hiring.
Yes.
With that, Aakarsh, I'm sure you meet a lot of startup founders. A lot of them apply to your program, probably pitch to you at events and conferences, and tell you a little bit about their idea as well.
Yes.
But what kind of ideas are the ideas that you would like to back, right? Because what are some parameters or factors that let's say, factor in when making a choice as to which startups do you want on your portfolio and would be a part of this entire program, right?
Yes.
So are there any factors or parameters basis which you shortlist these startups?
So there are two things. So one is my personal opinion, and then as a public, as a government-backed organization, there are two different lenses, but not very different again. One, in terms of being a government body, the selection process needs to be really transparent and robust. So one of the founding principles of startup selection is that there has to be an open call for applications so that there's an equal opportunity for all kinds of startups to apply. And two, there has to be an objective evaluation for which we sort of bring in various incubators, business mentors, experts, fintech experts as well, who evaluate the startup on various parameters. So one is in terms of the founding team and their ability to execute this solution. Two, their traction or understanding of the market and how they can scale this solution. And if there's been any previous traction in terms of partnerships with banks or fundraise, and how well positioned they are to scale in this journey. But we also look at how we could add value to these startups. Some may be ahead of the curve, so we may not have selected such startups where we couldn't add value to their journey. So there has to be a fit in terms of the theme of the program, their stage, and their relevance to the overall say engagement or the cohort, and then that's how. And then through a jury and the bank also gets involved in the selection process. So it's usually the incubator and bank come into the picture. Incubator looks at the business aspects of it, and then the bank looks at the technical aspect in terms of integration with their product, or whether they could partner with them, use case. A lot of these aspects get validated in the process. So I guess that's one way of looking at the selection process. But personally, for me, from my own experience, I think it's the entrepreneur which is the driving driving factor, because can this person take this idea through to the next few years, and even in spite of challenges, can they figure this out? Two, do they have an understanding of the domain? Fintech also as a sector, we've seen more experienced founders come in, people with 15-20 years of banking experience, who know exactly the problem statements, the solution that is needed, and have the connects to take it forward. So what we are challenging is that notion where we are trying to bring in the new age entrepreneurs from colleges, young entrepreneurs who can get their ideas to the fintech space, which may give us a fresh perspective. So that's something that we are looking at. But that's broadly.
Great, really interesting. So I think, like you rightly said, because the entire program is structured in a manner that it's for a certain stage.
Yes.
The stage at which the startup and their product is also matters a lot. And then obviously the founding team, their idea, the vision of the founder, and how well you can probably equip them also and help them out, right, at that stage, which is great. I think with that, Aakarsh, again, now because of all of these events, mixers, conferences that you go to and you represent RBIH there, and then I think obviously hosting such events for the ecosystem to come together and for your portfolio startups also to get that exposure are extremely important. And I know you keep conducting them across different cities, right? How big of a role do you think does networking play in general in an entrepreneur's journey? Because I think, again, studying at London School of Economics, I'm sure I want to plug that in as well. The peer group that you would have been surrounded by and the kind of access of people that you had, I'm sure would have shaped your journey very differently.
Absolutely.
And I want to know, in the context of entrepreneurship as well, how much of a impact does the people you're surrounded with and your network have on the kind of opportunities and the scale that you can go to as an entrepreneur?
So I think a very interesting question. I very strongly believe that early networks are very, very important for entrepreneurs, because the first people you hire, the first customers you get, and the first set of people you seek advice from come from your immediate network.
Correct.
No matter how well the ecosystem has shaped to democratize opportunities for entrepreneurs, it still matters that you have a personal connect with these stakeholders, and that really comes from your own network. I mean, on a lighter note, when I was studying at the LSE, the director back then said that if you study at the LSE, be sure that you have bed and breakfast in any part of the world.
Okay.
So it's like you can walk into any country and then just ping, and you'll have your network or the people that you studied with.
But it's so true, right?
It's absolutely, I think, I mean, having access to such opportunities is one way, and two, attending and being part of these events is also very, very critical. Because I felt like I built most of my network by attending these events, because a lot of people, stakeholders from different organizations come together at such startup events. And for them to know that you exist is very, very important.
That visibility.
Visibility comes through personal connects.
Yeah.
Today in the day of LinkedIn and whatever being influencers, etc. I felt like having that personal connection first really also helps your digital presence.
For sure.
And vice versa. Because when you have a digital presence and go back into the real world, your perception is at a higher order, and then your network views you in a different way. The kind of opportunities you get is also different.
True.
So it works both ways. Having a good digital presence and networks through events are very, very critical. And I feel personally in my entrepreneurial journey, all that I did, right from hiring to finding customers, to even expanding to the UK, all of them came through my networks of people who I interacted with. So it might be useful for any young professional to have some experience, understanding of an industry, connects in that industry before actually starting a venture. So this is, I would say, a counterintuitive point that I'm making here, that people say you start early in college, you become entrepreneurs. Right from college, your ability to fail, etc. is higher. Yes, it is higher because one, you don't have the experience and the foresight into the industry. But the other is your propensity to fail, or risks are also a lot lower as a student. So I would say it works both ways, and networks are a foundational ground for entrepreneurs.
Got it. Great. So I think with that, Aakarsh, we've obviously spoken a lot about your role at RBIH and what you guys are doing, and again, then the events and the networking bit that we just spoke about. That also brings me to asking you something around personal branding, right? Because this is a word that's been cropping up quite a lot in the past 2.5, 3 years, ever since the pandemic. And every single unicorn founder, to a bootstrap founder, to a corporate employee, to influencers, seem to have understood the value and essence of it, right? I want to know that just at an entity, at a basic level, and just as an individual today, access to opportunities and just being able to, again, be in rooms that other people can't. How much of it is associated today with one's personal brand, which is essentially their digital footprint, which we were speaking of? And how important do you think it is, especially for leaders like you, who are at managerial and authoritative roles in the hierarchy, especially, right? Because a lot of them want to do it, but they realize it very later on that it's important.
Correct. So absolutely, I would say that it's very, very important to have your digital presence. In a way, it has helped me in my career while I was going, because before I became an entrepreneur, I was very active in terms of, say, personal branding. I used to make videos.
Yeah, by the way,
showcase
guys,
them.
he wrote a startup song too. You should check out his YouTube channel.
That was an experiment back in the day, but I now look back at it, I sometimes feel embarrassed, but nevertheless, it was a very interesting experience for me to go through that creative curve. But I would say that one, you should be enjoying your professional sphere or your role, and to be able to communicate that work to the outside world. That is very, very important, because that's when people start to associate you with a particular organization or a particular role or a function. And that is very, very important, because you can't be all over the place trying to show 10 different things.
Correct.
So one, it took me a few years for people to understand I am someone associated with the startup world. And anyone who thinks of startups somehow from my network used to reach out to me. And two was the organization. So luckily for me, I also had the pedigree of the right organizations like IAMB or ISB or say Facebook or now
Or
RBI,
LSE,
RBIH. All this also helps in your journey, because then your perception, the kind of the way people look at you is very different. Now that was actually somewhere without realizing it was propelling my professional journey as well. And very interesting anecdote is I was traveling to Germany on a startup conference, and I posted about it on social media. And then I ended up coming back and I was attending a startup event, and some person I didn't know actually walked up to me and said, how was your trip to Germany?
Celebrity moment for Aakarsh.
And very interesting. So I attended this event by Head Start, and there was a young girl who was like maybe she was right out of college or something, and she was a volunteer at that event. And then she had this excitement, and she took a selfie with me, and that's me with the Aakarsh Naidu, and whatever. I personally felt that was a bit of an overkill, but for whatever. But I felt good that people are recognizing me through the work that I was doing. And very interestingly, my opportunity with Facebook also came because of my digital footprint. I had a friend who was working in Facebook at that point, who was watching my videos on the Startupreneur series that I had created. And he showed it to his boss and said, here is a guy who's doing something different and interesting. And that's when they also connected my real work, which was I was helping incubators, working with startups. So that gave me the visibility, and then they reached out to me, and then the opportunity happened. And a lot of other speaking engagements that you get is also
I'm sure, because of the presence.
So it's very, very important to keep your digital profile also up to date, communicate about the work. Also, but not spamming people too much, because then, too many posts, you lose the interest. So there is a sweet spot. I mean, this is my personal view, but there are different ways. We've seen creators who take it as a profession, post regularly, and then they build their brand and the viewership through that. But for someone who's in a regular job, cannot do this
that extensively also.
But can have different points in time where you're updated. That really helps. But when I became an entrepreneur, a lot of that got shrunk, because I was in my own thing, working on the venture, etc. I didn't have time for projecting a personal brand, and that is something that I missed during my entrepreneurial journey. And now coming back in action, so to say, with a role like this, you can now go back into the ecosystem, talk about the work that you're doing. So I think it plays both ways, and you cannot underscore the importance of a digital branding or a personal branding. In today's age.
No, I agree. Very rightly said. And I think I've heard of so many people, and my personal experiences also, whether it is, and opportunities can be of any kind, right? It's not just always a job opportunity. It's also probably meeting your future co-founder at an event. You don't know, or maybe just actually finding a very valuable, meaningful professional connect.
Absolutely.
And all of this happens only when you're visible, and that visibility comes in when platforms, are able to push what you are saying. At the end of the day, it's an opinion to the right side of audience. And that essentially then becomes your personal brand, because like you very rightly said, people have to associate you with a set domain or a set of words or a thought. It cannot be random, right? Because a personal brand is specific.
Correct.
I really like how you put that. I think with that, I want to segue a little bit into how you're just managing things, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
also talk a little bit on the personal side of things in front.
Yes.
Now that you're married, obviously, and
Yes.
you still have a demanding job,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And I think a lot of the youth today
Yes.
are in this zone more than ever, wherein they value their mental, physical, and emotional well-being
Yes.
more than anything else,
Correct.
while valuing their career and being ambitious, right?
Yes.
That's a very difficult combination to crack.
Yes,
But when you're in the pursuit of being on that road and track, there are a lot of times wherein you have to park the ball at
Yes.
one area, in
Yes.
one of the areas of life. Right?
Yes, yes.
I want to know from you, how are you juggling between just keeping up with family, personal life, and an extremely demanding job where, like you said, each day is so different.
Yes,
There are
yes.
events, you're interacting with people, you're meeting government entities, authorities. So I don't know if there's a secret sauce to it. I don't think the word balance really exists in life.
Yes, yes,
But I want to know your take on it.
Very, very interesting. And this is something that I always grapple with and try to have some perspective or understanding, but it's continuously evolving and on the go. So, I mean, I would not like to call this as a job per se, but it's a role that as an opportunity that's been given to me to really empower, the ecosystem and entrepreneurs. So I think and act like an entrepreneur, and much of the ownership towards the impact that we can create is always be there. So as such, there's no cutoff or a boundary that I will only work for this time or this part of the day and get done with it. But I'll also come back to how I am streamlining my work to that kind of a schedule. So that, and now also being recently married, I have one more sort of relationship to manage, so
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah, the
And,
dynamics do change.
Yes, and that's
Yeah.
where being an entrepreneur helped me in stakeholder management, so to say. And I started looking at it as different spheres.
Yeah.
So there's one, my family, parents, brother. Then there's my wife.
Yeah.
And then, there is my personal time, my social life.
Correct.
And then a large chunk of it or related to work.
Yeah.
So I started realizing that work started taking up a lot of my schedule. It has become very demanding, challenging, lot of travel involved. So that started kind of taking a toll on my, personal well-being also, that I have to travel, take an early morning flight, take a late night flight back, and do that like, once or twice a week. And then you have to be accountable to people at home.
Yeah.
You're not spending enough time
He
there.
means his wife.
Yeah. That's where there was a disconnect and a challenge, to sort of when it was a peak time.
Yeah.
Then I realized it's not sustainable to just prioritize work all the time, and also then one day I felt like I just prioritize personal, then you're missing out on the professional journey.
aspect.
Then you have to trade
you
off.
can let go of either, right?
Yes,
Completely.
yes.
That will never be possible.
That is a thought that I had, and then I imagined myself, let's say I didn't have an adventurous role like this, and I was doing something more stable, and I was working from home, and I had all the time and work-life balance.
Yeah.
Would I still be as motivated? No, maybe not, because whatever I'm doing that is so-called busy is the work that I really enjoy and I want to do. And therefore, there's no complaining about that.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, I want to spend quality time with my family, my wife. I really enjoy going back home and having that space.
Yeah.
So I've tried different kind of work schedules, because my work is very demanding from what a lot of people need to interact with me. I need to interact with people. So there is very little time for me to say send emails or do stuff that requires me to sit in one place and do it. So finding that space was the biggest challenge, and I was facing a pressure. So now I've kind of figured out a way that I want to spend the earlier part of my day responding to stuff that requires me to sit down and work and plan, and then use the rest of the day to have just purely stakeholder engagements. And then once I go back home, I completely switch off in terms of having no work.
Yeah.
I want to be present.
focus and
I just want to be
presence,
present at home.
Yeah.
So there was a time where I was at home and I'm constantly thinking about work or responding to work emails, and that was not, it was counterproductive.
Yeah.
Neither I was doing justice to work.
Neither here nor there, right? Yeah.
So that's where over time I figured out this balance to when I'm at work, I'm at work.
Yeah.
And when I'm at home, I'm at home. And then I need to cut off that sphere. And each sphere is very, very important. So I really enjoy, when I'm with family, when I'm traveling with them, with my wife.
Yeah.
We go out, we travel a lot. that's fear.
I
and
think
the
it's also prioritization and what needs to be given
Absolutely.
importance and urgency at that time.
And there are different times where you need to prioritize your personal life,
For sure.
engagements, and you need to give more time to that. And then there are peak times in your professional career that you need to prioritize.
Correct.
So somewhere I felt like you watched this show called Family Man on Prime and all of that. So this guy is a kind of a Secret Service agent, and he's juggling family life and demands of his profession and all that. So I felt like that at some point where I'm juggling so many calls, stakeholders. The team was growing, a lot of demands on my time, and then personal life also is something that I'm setting up as we speak. So all that I had to manage. But then it's like much like any skill, you spend some time and figure out and understand what's going on around you. That's very important, that awareness, that how much to give for personal life and professional life. And that balance, I tried out 100 different things. So once I would wake up early in the morning and then, try doing that. But then there's expectation that you need to, say, go to the workplace. So that morning time was not feasible. So I tried 100 different experiments to see. Yes. And now sort of saying, at least I now enjoy my weekends. Touch wood, I mean, I just don't want this to be seen. But, I enjoy my weekends, I travel. And then workplace also, I have try to spend more time with the team, although they feel otherwise, that, we don't get enough time with you. That's a reputation I've built unknowingly, that I'm a very busy person for some reason.
No, I'm sure you are, Aakarsh. I can just...
No, but I want to change that notion. Maybe that's like my next goal. To be more available / accessible to people who want to reach out to me. Or I want to be of that. So I'm managing my time. I've become more disciplined with responding to my emails. I think so. I mean, not yet, but yeah, I guess that's that. But long and short of it is, one cannot cut off both spheres and be on steroids in terms of being a high performer at work and also like high performing individual at home and all of that.
I think that never happens. You can never do that.
Yes. So I think you need to have this switch to turn on and off, so that you have to be present at the place that you're in.
Correct. No, I think that's very sound advice, and I myself have tried implementing it, but again, I don't think I'm anywhere at this point. But yeah, I think with that, Aakarsh, while we're coming to the end of this conversation, I think one very important question I want to ask you before we let you go. I think, like I said, right, this is a podcast which is for people who are looking to either figure out what they want to do with their career, or have stumbled upon a career option and want to know more about it, or are just inquisitive to know how they can grow and become better individuals with each passing day, right? Now, we covered at length your entire journey across different roles and everything that you've been able to do, to striking a work-life balance, to, kind of building a team at RBIH from scratch and what you guys are doing. For somebody who's just looking to do something of their own, or just excel in their professional life, in their career, right? Do well in their career in general, their best. What do you think are a few advices that you'd like to give to the audience that helped you in your career in general, in your trajectory, which if they could replicate maybe in a way, or mold and tweak and make it their own, could probably simplify things for them, right? Because I think nobody lands on a career one fine day and they're like, oh, this is what I want to do, right?
Yes.
It's a journey everyone has to go through. But what are a few things that can probably make that bumpy ride a little more smooth?
Absolutely. So first things first, I think the career choices are more serendipity than, a very structured thought and plan and action. You take most actors, most celebrities, all of them say that, this was a career choice that they had not planned, but it had led to them becoming whatever they are. Like, I think it was one leading to another, or an opportunity that shaped you to understand what you are interested in and what you're really good at and what you want to do. All this learning has to come through, persistence and experience. So I have this rule called the first 100 rule that I say in entrepreneurship or in career. So when I say the first 100, like if you are an entrepreneur and you are building your idea and you're seeking investment, make sure that you have to make at least 100 pitches to different VCs. And you know that by the end of your 20th or 30th pitch, your story starts refining, you know what the market wants, you know what exactly a VC is looking for, and that's when you start seeing your success in terms of pictures. Even if you take creatively also, if somebody is making a video, the first few shots, they just like
they
go
don't
for
make it
best.
to the cut, yeah.
And then once you get the rhythm right, everything else goes right after that. So I think it is very imperative for you to make those mistakes for the first 20, 30 times. And even in career, when I say job interviews, emotionally prepare yourself to do 100 interviews, because otherwise the road seems a bit bumpy, where like you've done 20 interviews and you figure out, oh, I'm not getting a job. Where am I headed?
Rejection is very difficult to take in general.
Absolutely. So even in the process of doing interviews, so many times you get two learnings. One is your CV gets refined.
For sure.
And two, you understand what kind of opportunities you want or don't want, because your interviewers are telling you this is
You get a lot of clarity.
That's how it happened to me, because early on in my career, I actually struggled to identify the line of work. What am I doing? So I did 100 interviews to know, okay, this type of organization, this role, this is what they expect from you. Whether I have the skill set or not is the secondary thing. And that's where my CV also started getting refined, to say, okay, if this is the job description, this is the opportunity, this is how I need to present my story.
Right.
And that story, refining your story, is the most important part of you getting a success as an entrepreneur, to pitch to your customers or the VCs, or to you as an individual pitching to a potential employer. So emotionally prepare yourself to have those 100 conversations in whatever you want to do. And two, it's a journey of experimentation. It's the same thing that, you go one after the other. It's okay to be confused. It's okay to figure things out along the way. And once you go back, you can connect the dots.
Yeah.
It'll always drive you to your deepest desire of who you want to be and what you want to do, and that will shape your career choices. So you let yourself free and not be too hard on yourself in terms of what you really want to do, what you really want to structure. I mean, it could be as simple things like, I want to be a management consultant. Do you really know what it entails? You're traveling 90% of the time, spending 20 hours a day doing different things.
Yeah.
Just because you think traveling is an exciting life, after 2 months you realize that is the thing that is draining you out.
Yeah.
So you experience different kinds of professions as well, and I am fortunate enough to have had a varied set of experiences early on in my career to know exactly what I want and I don't want.
Yeah, because the experimentation ultimately gave you the clarity to choose what was right for you, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So feel free to experiment early on, and be ready for as many rejections as possible, and build your story in the process.
Yeah.
That's what.
Great. No, thank you so much, Aakarsh. I think that was lovely, and I hope that everybody who stuck around till this point in the podcast not just listens to the advice and take learnings back from Aakarsh's journey, but you're able to implement it and execute it, right? Because it all boils down to execution at the end of the day. But I had a great time having you on the podcast, Aakarsh. Thank you so much for taking out the time. If there's any last advice or a note on which you'd like to end the podcast, please feel free to for the audience.
Yes.
But it was lovely having you over.
Thanks a lot, Dhairya. I mean, when you did reach out regarding the podcast, I was a little hesitant because, it's been a while since I sort of sat in front of a camera and shot something formally.
Yeah.
There was a lot of hesitation, but when I was going through your podcast, how it was done, I saw that there was a natural conversation that took place, and that really gave me the comfort. And today, the conversation we had was exactly in that sphere. So it was I really enjoyed it. And I'm sure your other podcast episodes were equally enjoyable. And yeah, I mean, to the audience who have stuck around till now, thank you so much. I didn't expect that you'll go through an hour-long podcast.
More than an hour.
But if you did reach out to me, I would like to know who you are.
Please feel free to.
Please feel free to reach out to me, and if I could be of any help, I would love to.
Sure.
And thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure to be here on this podcast.
No, I'm glad we could do this, and thanks once again, Aakarsh. For everybody, we'll also be linking Aakarsh's social media handles in the description, so please do check it out and feel free to reach out to him for any kind of assistance or help that he could kind of navigate you through. That's it for this episode, but before you leave, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the Dhairya Decodes channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.